Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. That was the song that my heart sang when the picture of the International School of Storytelling popped up on my computer screen. I knew I had to go. I didn't know how, I didn't know why, I didn't know where the hell I was going to get the money, but my GPS had been set. And by GPS I mean my great pixie summoning. So I wasn't to take the quickest route because the School of Storytelling in the UK wasn't taking students, they told me, outside the EU. And so I wrote them an email, and another one, and another one, and another one, and another. Every couple of months I wrote an email, can I come now? 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 And after 18 months, they finally said yes. And they accepted me into the storytelling as performance art. And I booked everything that day. I booked the course, I booked the flights, I booked accommodation, everything. And then a couple of weeks later they wrote to me and said actually they'd made a mistake and I hadn't done any of the prerequisite courses. And I said, too late, I'm coming. And my teacher said, well, perhaps it was pesky pixies that had ticked the application. So when I landed in England, it was midsummer. And I don't know if it was midsummer madness. Perhaps it was the intoxicating summer light. Maybe it was those pixies, but I was bubbling over with joy. And as I landed, I just felt a deep sense of coming home. Now, the School of Storytelling is in the quintessential Sussex countryside. And when I arrived, I was walking everywhere barefoot to connect with my English roots. And I noticed in that first week that in that small storytelling class of 8, there was another storyteller who was also walking everywhere barefoot. Now, all my walks in that first week were solitary walks, but then finally at the end of the first week, a rather tall, shy, Swedish storyteller said, would you like to go for a walk with me? I said, sure. And we walked up Pixton Hill and we were about to climb over a stile to go into the forest when all of a sudden I heard my GPS say, Lindy, if you go into the forest with this man, your life will never be the same. And I paused for just a moment on the top of that stile, and then I plunged right in. And that first walk, well, that was a beautiful 2-hour meander through the hidden pathways of the forest. And then the next night, it was a 3-hour walk over hills and dales and through lots of paddocks of stinging nettles. And the third night, that was an epic 4-hour walk, and we ended up at my first English pub, the 600-year-old Hatch Inn. You know, and as we walked, Ulf really didn't know where he was going, and he often didn't know where we were, but somehow he always managed to find us our way home. And as we went on those walks, we told each other stories about our lives and things we'd done, and Ulf introduced me to the enchanted English countryside, English pubs and warm beer, and I introduced Ulf to the pixies and the pixies to Ulf. But let me assure you, it wasn't all beer and pixies. We were there to learn the craft of storytelling, and at the end of the 5-week course we had to do an hour-long performance to the public, and we worked hard. And as we worked hard, we also rehearsed together a lot, and Ulf brought his experience and wisdom, and yeah, I brought the pixies. And after that 5 hectic weeks, you know, I took a moment to pause after those performances and reflected on my time there and how much I'd learnt everything I've experienced. And I thought about that tall, whimsical Swedish storyteller, and I thought, what would my life be like without him when I went back to Australia? And then on the very last day, we went on a mammoth 5-hour walk through the beautiful fading golds of that harvest summer. And we stopped on top of a hill, and Ulf turned to me, and I think he surprised himself. He surprised me, but he probably didn't surprise the pixies when he said, "Lindy, I think it'd be a good idea if you married me." It's a fast worker. But then the next day, poof, he disappeared back to Sweden without an answer. Well, I was confused. I was a bit of a mess really at this stage. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. All I knew was that I had to go to Findhorn, right up the north of Scotland. Now, I didn't know why, and I didn't know how, and I didn't know where, but it was just that global pixie summoning that was telling me I had to go there. And so I jumped in the hire car at Heathrow, I set the GPS to Findhorn, and I drove. And I drove, and I drove, and I drove for 5 hours that first day. My brain was just in a mess, and when I finally stopped at a hotel and had a look where I'd got to, I was still only about an hour away from Heathrow, even though I'd been driving for 5 hours. And I thought, how is that possible? I've been driving 5 hours and I'm only this far? I was just really, really confused. And I know England's got small, quaint roads, but every single bloody road? And I was ready to strangle my GPS as the 366 times she said, in 200 yards, enter the roundabout. And when one enters the roundabout, one might take the second exit. I thought, yeah, exactly, roundabouts. Anyway, it was a slow trip to Scotland. You know, and if I'd been in a better frame of mind, I might have enjoyed the scenery. If I'd been in a clearer state of mind, I might have thought to check the GPS settings, because I could see the odd motorway in the distance. But that just seemed to confound my confusion even more. But eventually, I made it to Findhorn in Scotland. Now, I don't know if you know Findhorn, but it's the spiritual home of the fairy folk. And I arrived there and I was so excited. I jumped out of the car to find that all the accommodation was booked out. And I did what any self-respecting, tired, stressed out tourist would do. I chucked a wobbly in the car park. And I said, "Pixies, you told me to come here! Find me a place to stay now, or I'm going!" And poof, this woman appeared out of nowhere. And she said, "You looking for a bed? I've got a bed. Look, I've got a bed. Follow me." And I followed her back to a beautiful B&B. She opened the door, and there on the wall was a picture of the Blue Mountains of Australia. Australia. She said, "Oh yes, I've got family in Australia." She said, "Oh, you know," she said, "I married a Swedish man after knowing him for about 5 weeks on a short course." And that's when I heard my GPS giggle. Anyway, Findhorn was beautiful. And my mind was still all over the place. My emotions were crazy. But every time I would walk outside, a tree or a rock would call to me to come and sit and rest. And by the banks of the Findhorn River, in a deserted church graveyard, I found the headstones of my great-great-great-grandparents, David and Margaret. And I sat down with David and Margaret, had a picnic, and I poured out my heart to them. And they listened as only great-great-great-grandparents can. And so that piece of Findhorn helped me know my mind and know my heart. And my GPS was telling me to take a new course in life. And I thought, can I really just leave everything I know and marry a man from the other side of the world? And my GPS said yes. And she brought me to the joy of the storytelling school, and then she brought me to the peace of Pinthorn, and now she was telling me to go to Sweden. So, with a clear head and a clear heart, I jumped back into the car. I checked the settings on the GPS, and they had been set by some unknown person to avoid every major highway and freeway. So I reset those, and poof, a freeway appeared before me, and I drove down that freeway to Heathrow. I caught the plane to Sweden. And 4 months later, Ulf and I married back in Australia. So, you can ignore your GPS. You can yell and scream at your GPS, and if you ignore your GPS, well, she's just going to tell you to do a U-turn and go back. And then if you still ignore her, well, she's just going to recalculate your route and still take you to where she wants you to go. And you can scream and kick all the way on the scenic route, and you can take 1,000 roundabouts and another 1,000 roundabouts, or you can check your settings and just take the freeway. But either way, your GPS is going to get you where you need to be. And when it does, well, you can expect when you arrive a great pixie shindig.